All right, data rock stars. So, time for another in our Fun with Data series. So, today is Redfin. And Redfin's obviously doing a lot of awesome stuff. They have an incredible app where you can scroll through all these properties as we have our quarantine dreams. And they also do some interesting stuff with agents and incentives and how they compensate them and how that leads to better customer service and a lot of cool stuff they're doing in the industry. So, today we're going to check it out and we're going to export our property favorites and visualize that in Tableau. And I have a special treat for you today, and we'll get to that in a second. But don't forget to follow us in the other social media platforms. So we are on Spotify, teaching just some 10 to 15 minute quick little podcast kind of distillations of concepts and readings that I give my university students. And we're also on Instagram and Twitter. So check that out. And then on YouTube, there's a number of other Fun with Data Tableau tutorials. So we've done Eventbrite. So a lot of the webinars and everything you are attending, a lot of those in-person events, I forget those even existed, but over the years, there's a lot of cool stuff you might have in your account to visualize, as well as what could be a little scary for some of us with our Amazon order history. I know mine is tens of thousands of dollars at this point, but it's been a long time. So cut yourself some slack over the years. The average isn't too bad. And your Uber rides or Uber Eats data, if you have a lot of that lately. And then we also do fun stuff like Twitter data that we can pull with some no-code tools like WaveScript and MonkeyLearn and do a little bit of AI classification like sentiment and things like that. So definitely pop on over there and we'll see you in social media. And so, yeah, today, before we jump into the Redfin, we're going to do it for a couple of unique properties. So Seattle's super famous for the movie Sleepless in Seattle with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, and that's the house there on the right. And there are different types of houseboats and dwellings. So there's a lot of these around the country, whether it's in Florida or in Portland or famously Sausalito, also across from San Francisco. So there are different regulations at the city level and then even up to the Supreme Court federal rules. There's a famous case from Florida on that. But in Seattle, there are these different categories, and they've even changed recently and evolved over the number of years while I've been here, living on one, not too far away from the one you see on the screen. So there are floating homes, which are these like traditional, looks like a normal house that you would draw. It just happens to be on either logs or concrete or whatever for the foundation, traditionally logs. Which mine is right now, below me, a couple feet below there. And so there's also floating on water residences, which is what you might know as houseboats. So a lot of people will get a little bit confused with floating homes and houseboats, and we'll get to why that's a problem with real estate data in a little bit, but it's like comparing apples and oranges. And like I like to say, those are both fruit, and that is great. If you want to live on the water, you have to choose kind of between the two. So, the cost might be a little bit different. One might have a slip fee that charges by foot or something else like that, or you own the slip and then pay an HOA. The floating homes mostly have their own HOAs, and they have various costs as well, just like you would have for like a condo or something like that to pay for upkeep of the dock, insurance, and all those different things. So there's also other types. There's some things that got kind of grandfathered in, like registered barges, vessels with dwelling units, and liveaboards. There's a large liveaboard community out over by Golden Gardens Beach on the west side of Seattle, just north of downtown. So there are different things like that. But today we're mostly going to look at the first two, and we're going to pop into Redfin and check that out. So this is the normal screen you would see. I typed in a zip code that I knew was near Lake Union, which is right in the middle of Seattle there. So downtown is just past South Lake Union. And then I'm looking there. So because it's using this category, I'm really only concerned with a certain area. So I want to remove that outline of the zip code. And they actually let you draw in what you would like. So if you would draw in the area you want, and I'll probably get, some on land residences there, but just to show you what it looks like, you would go through here. So now you have a list. It's important when you look at the filter right now, I want to do an analysis based on not just what's for sale right now. I want to look at historically. So I want to be an informed consumer and see what the market trends are and what the history is, not just what an asking price is for the data. Because a lot of times, real estate agents, they're going to put their best foot forward and their best high price forward to help that seller out and maximize the price. And I'm a buyer, so I don't want the maximum price. So I want to know what they actually sold for, not what they aspirationally want to sell it for. But if you have a different lens, you might come from a different perspective as the seller, for example. But same kind of logic applies, but it'd be a different analysis on what's currently for sale right now and then what happened over the last number of years. So you can turn that to off for sale, and now you have sold on the filter, and that's on, and it's set to the last 3 months by default. This is kind of an interesting market. So there's, a handful of them for sale at a given time, but it's not like when you're looking at every condo in a city or something like that. So I don't have a huge amount of data to work with, and I'm going to want the most number of years I can get, and Redfin will go up to the last 5 years. Look, I can go click apply, and now it's going to give me the last 5 years. So I'm going to see this longer list. So you have the map view on the left, and we can go to the list and you can see all of the different ones coming up. So we've got 9 pages, and they're all here. So they're not all going to be floating homes. So I'm not interested in these amazing condos that are looking over the water. I want to be on the water. I want to be floating. I want to kayak to happy hour. I want the ducks to stop by my house. All of those things are totally true. And so I'm just going to scroll through these, and then I'm going to click favorite on each one of these. So I already did this ahead of time, but you can see that, okay, so that's a condo, that's a floating house, or could be a houseboat as well. You can kind of see what they look like, so you might have to scroll through a little bit. So whatever type of property you're looking at, we're looking for comparables, comps. So we're going to have a nice list after going through all of that. So I already went ahead and did that. And so now I can go to the favorites. And Redfin's pretty awesome in that they have 2 functions. They have a new short list within the last year. They launched that. But we have other favorites. So I have 105 that I clicked heart on, so for the past 5 years. And so there's a mix, like I said, in the different type of dwellings. There's the floating homes themselves. Like this is definitely a floating home. It's got logs, a dock. There's no steering wheel. There's no hull. And they'll have actually little yellow placards with the number for their license for the state or the city of Seattle and the regulations there. So those are all traditional floating homes. That looks like a floating on water residence, and that like a home. So a lot of beautiful, unique places to live, from super tiny 300 square feet in this case to like super modern with a lot of square feet for being on a floating house with probably a concrete foundation. Might even have a window to under the water. So super fun market and super cool data to look through. I want to see what the trends are. So we're going to go ahead, and so nice that Redfin is, they actually put a download button there. So go ahead and download that, and we will have Redfin favorites data to open up in Excel. Awesome. So just briefly going through what you have a type of sale, so that's past sale. It could be currently for sale if I had checked those, but I was just looking at the historical data. So you could compare past versus current, which is probably what I would do next. So you have, very importantly, is the sold date, because obviously the real estate market, especially in this city, has completely increased by multiple factors as the rise of Amazon and the other tech companies in the area have expanded, like Adobe, Tableau, Google as well. So the rise of Seattle as a tech powerhouse is obviously going to be affecting all of the real estate and how much Seattle builds as well, which is more than San Francisco, but maybe not still sufficient to keep prices in check. So a house that sold in 2014 might have doubled in price, for example. But we'll find out when we look at the data. So you have the sold date, the property type, which this could be helpful because we can split that out when we're doing the analysis. Others kind of tricky. They didn't really probably think of the different cities' versions of floating houses when they were designing what the data would look like in the MLS system or the Redfin system, whichever one is controlling that data. Probably MLS, I would guess, in their standards. So you have other, condo co-op, townhouse, mortgage. So at least mortgage you would know is a boat versus that for the other. So a little bit tricky, but you do have it by neighborhood. Some of these just say Lake Union, some say East Lake, some say South Lake Union, and the others would be Portage Bay. So those are the 3 main areas that you're going to find. Obviously, what's super important here is price and then square foot. So Redfin's really cool in that even in the app, very easily, they already have price per square feet calculated out. So that's something that if it wasn't there, which it isn't in all of the real estate apps, or they hide it in a couple of layers below, I think that's super important to know. Yes, maybe that $2 million modern house with the concrete foundation was really um, great at having good finishes and sub-zero appliances and low VOC paints or something, and maybe it's worth it to be more price per square feet. But that's a good quick indicator of what's happening there. If you notice, there's a big standard deviation between the price per square feet with when the houses look very different. That's a good set of questions to ask. And then also, you'll have a number of different HOAs, and their prices vary as well. So depending on how they manage it, they may or may not do a good job at having a reserve. I've been an owner before, and it was probably too low for 3 or 4 years, and so they ended up having to do special assessments later. So there are still some nuances to that, but sometimes you're paying a lot and maybe not getting as much out of it. So it's kind of a question for you to explore as well. So we can, graph this in either Excel or Tableau. So you could go ahead and take this data in Excel, and then go ahead and insert charts and do price over time. I'm more of a Tableau fan, and since Tableau is based in Seattle, not too far from these floating homes in the area just to the east of Fremont and Wallingford, we're going to actually use Tableau because that is kind of hometown proud, and it's a lot more fun and looks very cool. So we'll pause here and go there. All right, so now that we have Tableau open, we're going to connect to the data, connect to Excel files, and then we're going to find that. All right, so now that we have Tableau open and we have our data in here, so Redfin gave us an export in a CSV format. So that is different than Excel. So make sure you go to, when you're doing file and you connect to data, that you're adding that CSV format, unless you saved it in Excel because you were kind of filtering it out or something before, which is cool also. So here is everything. You can see it came in pretty good. Tableau already figured out the geography for the state and city. So that's good. I wanted to make sure date. So date's always one to watch out for. Dates can be tricky in so many systems online, and it already figured out it's a date and it's not a date and time. So good job, Tableau, on automatically figuring out that. And it figured out these were numbers. So price is a number. So we can actually change that later to be a currency, but all good to go there. Neighborhoods probably not in the geography database that I'm aware of, although there's probably something third party you could bring in. So that's fine as a text string, and we should be good to go there. So got all sorts of interesting stuff. Latitude, longitude also there. So you could, of course, map it. Redfin does that in the product, but you can make your own maps as well. So what am I interested in? So I'm thinking through real estate and everything. I think I mentioned a little bit that I'm really interested in over time, and then in particular, price per square foot. Obviously, with that property type not being perfect on, house versus houseboat versus those other types, that doesn't really give us a apples to apples comparison. But I just want to live on the water, and I want to know what it costs. And so that gives us kind of a proxy for that. You could be very careful and just do the favorites for one type or another. If you're really confident that you can make that guess based on looking at the listing data. So I would recommend doing that if you've narrowed it down and you're like, I want to live on a floating house, or I want to live on a houseboat, or one of those other types. So that's probably the best way to do it, is upstream the data so you have clean data going in. But I'm looking at everything and I'm just a little curious. So let's do that. We're looking at sold date. So I don't care about the listing date in this case. You might want to, if you're looking at something for like the difference between the listing date and the sold date. That's obviously an important metric in real estate. But I'm looking for sold dates, and I'm going to make that exact and continuous. That's good. Okay, so what I want to know is that price per square foot over time. So it's going to do sum. So Tableau chooses the automatic aggregation as a sum, which is not what I'm looking for. I want to know the average of that. So I want to go ahead and right click on that default properties, aggregation, and average. So the average price per square foot over time. Maybe do a bar chart so it's a little bit cleaner and go from there. So look at that. We do have a little bit of a dip in 2021, back to below 2019. That may be a function of the number of properties sold, and there's just kind of a sample. I would probably tell you it's March, and it's probably just the second week that's even remotely pleasant in Seattle out of the gray and the rain. So that's not really a fair comparison for the partial year. That's something to look for, and all sorts of data. What are the seasonal factors going on that would change something? So 2020, we have a full year and had also all sorts of stuff going on with COVID and people wanting to buy houses and get out of a condo, perhaps in South Lake Union or downtown, and get somewhere where you have the open air and can sit on the dock and talk to some ducks, possibly these that have their own Instagram accounts. So check out Seattle Ducktales on Instagram. There are some great little pictures that you can see this same couple that visits me almost every day. So back into Tableau. This is interesting. So we have price per square foot by year. So that's definitely what I wanted to look at. I'm kind of curious if maybe there's other data you could put in. Let's see, maybe year built and you got a kind of a mix. I'm not seeing any trends there. So that's not very interesting. They're all the same states. They're all the same status. The number of beds, that's kind of like a proxy for price per square foot. That's something you could look at in baths as well. So maybe that's something we could do. So maybe we duplicate that, and so we could. I'm trying to see what I want to do with that. The average number of beds could maybe tell us that. So let's do that. Beds. Not sure if I really want to do this, but we'll see. I'll give it a try. Do the average. So beds, I'll put that as a second mark, and I'm going to overlay that as a dual axis. So I'm going to right click on that second one with beds, and I'm going to do a different mark. So the first one is a bar chart. I'm going to do a line on top of it so you can see how the trends interact. And those default colors aren't that great. Let's do see if there's something a little more. I know Seattle grays are in Tableau, but that's a little boring. Let's pick something like the blue and green is usually what you see in Seattle, like we have for the Sounders and for the Seahawks. It's not quite their exact hex color, but bear with me. We're just winging it. Whoa, a little too big. Let's see. Let's make that one a little thicker so you can see it. And yeah. So now you can see this is kind of interesting. So on average, they are selling more beds per house in 2017. And even then, the price wasn't that low. So the number of bedrooms even is kind of dipping there on average, but the price was higher than 2017 here. So in particular, we have a low number of beds in 2020, yet the highest price per square foot at over 1,000, looks like 1,038.7. So that really tells you that the market is pretty high there. All right, so I wonder what else we could look at that would be fun. We can look at average sale prices. Maybe we have the price per square foot by year. I guess my favorite is more of this because it gives you a ratio, and ratios are much more powerful than just total numbers. But maybe we duplicate this, and instead of the average, we just do the sale price, which is there, and we're going to change that default property on aggregation to an average, and then drop that there as well. So the sale price, and maybe let's do days on market as well. That could be fun. So I'm going to drag that up here and also do that same dual axis. And this time, let's make that a circle, and we can change the colors. Days on market, maybe let's call that blue. Yeah, let's keep that as blue. And price of green for money. Okay, I actually always like to drop the opacity to make it a little bit softer, and then add a border in there. So what in the world? Days on market in 2021. Oh, that's some. It's still some. let's make sure that is an average days on market. Average days on market 2021. They have 40. I've definitely seen traditional houses in Seattle right now going in just 1, 2, or 3. But this is fascinating. Look at that. That looks like a trend. So 2016 days on market, that doesn't even seem right. 1,600 days, there must be some bad data in there. So when that happens, though, I'd kind of click here. In Tableau, you can get this button here for view data and full data, so you can see the actual rows of everything that's going on. That can't possibly be right, but this is how you investigate it. So you'll always see things in Tableau that you're like, is that really right? So days on market, 1,700, that cannot possibly be. Something funky is going on there. So I might look at cleaning the data a little bit. See when the year sold, 2016. So all of those data issues are from 2016. So I don't really believe that. I think they have something wrong with the data. So maybe we're just going to take this year. I'm going to control click that and drop it into filter so it still stays there. And I'm going to go to years and 2016. I'm sorry, you're out. It must be some sort of data migration issue since that's the last year. Maybe the calculation is messed up for some reason. So for whatever reason, okay, let's click out of that. And, okay. So we're still getting those. But what else is going on there? 1,400 days on market. I still don't quite buy it. But it does make sense that it's going down. So I don't know. This one I'm going to file under fishy. So I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to put that red for analysis later. That's okay. We can do something else instead. Let's look at year built and the date that it was sold, see if the average on that changes anything. Maybe there's a trend there. So we actually want to let's do a count of the MLS. So I'm going to do count unique. So it should be unique data already, but I'm just going to double check. So for that MLS number, which is our unique identifier, which is a great key, we can do that to count the unique ones. And we're going to put that here. So let's see. All right, so I changed my mind. Let's look at the last couple of things. So definitely wanted to look at beds versus the price per square foot. So you got the square feet there and blue, and then the number of beds on average. So note, not a sum like Tableau usually does by automatically. You have to change that default. And I also wanted to look at what is the price per square foot by even like the year built. So obviously we've got two things going on. We have the change in the real estate market from the last 5 years until now. So you could take this as a filter and drop sold date on it in years. And I'm going to do all apply and okay. And I can show that filter on the right. So right now it's all years. So we're going to see how it changes while I click through it. But overall, you got, looks like a bit of an outlier here. Got a old house, probably just one. And you can look at the actual data and click full data and see, looks like on Fairview Ave, that one sold and it was pretty big and pretty expensive. So that's a bit of an outlier. That's okay. Just check it out. So you can see all of these different prices per square foot. That seems pretty high over in there for 1970. So you've also got these kind of newer houses built even recently when they had a few spots open up for those docks. So kind of interesting to see. That is not necessarily an indicator of a trend when it was built. They could be remodeled. Also, cool, unique style. It's kind of timeless. So it's not exactly the same as what it might be for a condo unit in downtown. Also, what about price per square foot by the actual date of the sales? So that was my initial really important data question that I was trying to answer is, what is the story of the Seattle real estate market and in this unique pocket of that over time? So you have 2016. There are still, a one bed, which is the color that's used here. That sold for 1463, so it might be interesting to look into what that was. But the rest is all structured in here between 500 and 1,000. So in 2016, it was almost unheard of, save for that outlier to be above the 1,000. So when you move beyond 2016, you'll see this 1,000 to even 1,500 plus, or some really crazy numbers up here. But you can see this one has 3 beds, 2,448 square feet in June of last year. They really wanted to get out of quarantine, and they did not care what that cost. So that's totally cool. But then you'll notice the slow start to the winter. But as you can see, looks like that is not that uncommon. There's not even that many listings early in the winter, because it only takes, the strong to survive the winter here. So definitely check out Redfin and check out the download feature for your favorites. Hope you had fun and fun with data. Follow us online. All right, and there's one more thing that I forgot. Well, with real estate data, one of the best things to do is map. Obviously, the entire application is built around the app, a little bit on lists, but the map that is built around would be fun as well to do in our own way, because obviously in real estate, the neighborhood and all the amenities matter, and that may affect everything. So, in Westlake, you may not have the restaurants over by Fremont and Gasworks Park because it might be a little bit quieter, but it's a little bit closer to downtown. And Eastlake, you've got a lot more floating houses and there's some cute neighborhood restaurants, but it's impossible to park. So you got a lot of different factors there. And I want to see how that affects the price and everything like that. So let's go ahead and check out. They have this generated latitude and longitude, but I think Tableau is creating that based on maybe the city or something like that. I don't think it's the right latitude and longitude. And these that are actually in the data from Redfin are the actual latitude and longitude, but it's here in measures. So I'm going to convert that to a dimension and then drag that onto the detail tab. So, all right, we already have a map like that in Tableau, which is why I love Tableau, even more so than Excel and all those other things that I'm in. A lot of the dates. So you can easily see here the Westlake sales, Eastlake, Portage Bay, and the Wallingford and Fremont area as well. So that's our latitude and longitude. So we know the data is happening at those specific points. But what I want to know is I want to take that powerful metric that I've been really enjoying as the price per square foot, and I'm going to drop that onto size, and then I'm going to increase the size so we can exaggerate the effect of where the most expensive ones are. And I always drop the opacity so I can see the overlap, so I don't make sure to miss one of those, because these are individual houses there. And it looks like it did the sum again, and what we want is that average of the price per square feet, because you wouldn't sum up a ratio, you want the average of that. So now we've got a little bit different of a data there. So you do see a little bit lower prices in Westlake in this list. It's obviously, remember, sold date was a factor there. And so maybe we drop sold date onto year and create an animation and see how that changes over time. So if you go ahead and click that, now that it's in pages and year, you can play through and see how it changes. That's really fast. So maybe we slow that down, and you want to show the history. You could even do trails to see, so it's a little bit easier for the human eye to go through. And if I spend some time on this, you can make it look really fancy. Maybe that's too slow. Okay. But anyway, you can check through and see how that changes over time. And obviously, at least 2020, you have quite a bit of expensive houses there, but still looks like a relatively affordable spot. And that's a relative answer for Westlake and everything there. So cool. Well, thanks for following us here on YouTube, and come back and we'll do more fun with data.